here's what's different about sex addiction. Think about the variety of behaviors: flirting, fantasy, conquesting after women at bars and work conferences, affairs, emotional affairs, digital content where you can buy content. There's interactions with other women digitally. There's pornography. The list goes on and on and on and on and on. A lot of men in this space, they actually just want to be wanted themselves. They want to be wanted. They want to be desired. They want women to lust after them, right? So it's actually less about lusting after the women and more about getting people to lust after them. Is this whole thing even an addiction? All right, are these guys making this up so that they can get off the hook? Right? You know, these are questions that are brought up all the time, especially by partners. Right? You know, is my husband actually an addict, or is he just this asshole who's cheating? And so let's talk about this, because I do think this matters. I'm not a big fan of the term sex addiction. I don't like it only because it's too broad. I think we should call this whatever we want to call it, but I think we should have different categories, because I do think there are men who are addicted in the sense that they can't stop. They cannot stop. They're addicted. And then there are men who are doing this who can stop. And therefore, you know, it would be called, again, compulsive, deceptive sexuality, some other name, but they're not addicted in the sense that they can stop. And here's why this matters: is it dictates the treatment. It dictates the modalities. The issue right now is I believe there's this overemphasis on this being an addiction, that these men are powerless, that they cannot stop, and that, you know, we need to monitor these guys. They need to go to 90 meetings in 90 days. And, my gosh, they can't wait to masturbate. They can't wait to look at pornography, and we got to protect, shield them from all electronic devices. And I think there are men who are addicted. Absolutely. They can't stop. They truly can't. I would say in my groups, two of the 8 men I have groups of 10. 2 guys in every group are addicts. So I'm not saying that sex addiction is or porn addiction is not a thing. It is a thing. I've seen it. Men can become addicted to it, and it can be very difficult for them to stop. It's very difficult for them to even go more than 24 to 48 hours. So that person would be defined. I think calling that person a sex addict or a porn addict would actually be an accurate description, right? They can't stop. They're trying to stop. They can't. Then there are guys who, when they get caught, they can stop, and they do stop. And they might not stop forever, but just because you can stop for like 9 months, and then you do it again, or you stop for 2 years and do it again. Again, does that make the guy an addict? Right? That he made this decision to go do this thing, but he could stop right when he got caught. Again, I think we need to be more curious about that. Now, again, why does all this matter? Because it dictates the treatment, right? Addiction treatment is largely, abstinence-based, sobriety-based, right? Don't do this. A lot of focus on like, oh man, that's not the life I want to live. I don't want to be that guy. We haven't studied how effective 12-step is for sex addiction. I don't know. I've been to a lot of the rooms. There's not a lot of sobriety in there, so I'm not sure how effective it is. The stats don't appear to show that it's effective based off of the relapse rate. But again, I also wonder too how much of it is actually effective or not effective, and how many men are actually going to a abstinence-based, sobriety-based addiction group who don't have an addiction. Right. And so sometimes I think, we look at the sobriety rate because it's low, right? It's 37%, I think. And a lot of people are like, and they assume that it's hard to overcome this, or that guys can't get sober. I disagree with that. I really disagree with that. I don't think that's the issue. I think the issue is, we can't just call this sex addiction like we do with cocaine, with narcotic, different substance addictions, right? To call somebody who has an alcohol problem, it is actually safe to go into that room and say, you guys have a dependency on alcohol. And largely, everybody in the room kind of does have a dependency to alcohol, right? They can't stop. They've tried, right? Or cocaine or heroin or methamphetamine or whatever it is. It actually is safe to come in that room and kind of blanket them all with this chemical dependency, because they are. Here's what's different about sex addiction. Think about the variety of behaviors: flirting, fantasy, conquesting after women at bars and work conferences, affairs, emotional affairs. There's like digital content where you can buy content. There's interactions with other women digitally. There's pornography. There's, I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on and on. A lot of men in this space, they actually just want to be wanted themselves. They want to be wanted. They want to be desired. They want women to lust after them, right? So it's actually less about lusting after the women and more about getting people to lust after them, right? That was my personal addiction. Mine, it wasn't really about sex and pornography so much for me as much as it was I wanted attention from women. I wanted sexual attention from women, physical attention from women. And so again, it's a very, very wide variety of behaviors we can engage in. Now listen to this. Think about each of those. Somebody could be getting something completely different, right? An emotional affair. Yes, you're breaking your marital contract, but how addictive is that if the guy's getting some of his, intimacy needs met or love needs met or whatever? I'm not condoning his behavior. He needs to, if he's ready to move on from his marriage, he needs to go tell his wife that before he goes around lying to her and two-timing her and living this double life. That's entirely unacceptable. It's extremely childish and it's abusive is what that is. You don't get the right to just lie to somebody. So I'm not condoning their behavior, but what I am saying is, how addictive is it really if he's getting something human out of it? It's unfaithful, sure. Is it infidelity? Absolutely. Is it cheating? You bet your ass. Does it warrant divorce? You bet it does. So I'm not condoning it, but I'm just saying calling it a sex addiction might be doing more harm than good. What I mean by that is throwing that guy in 12-step meetings and making him call his sponsor all the time and having him do check-ins every single night. Is that really necessary when this guy can stop, isn't addicted, and hasn't been, addictively engaging in these behaviors? He was more so doing it because he could get away with it. He was lying. He was hiding it, right? So again, there's a difference between lying and hiding stuff and addiction. Those are not the same thing. And that's why I think we need to be careful what we're calling this. If you truly are addicted, you can't stop. You have persistent urges all day long, right? Your brain wants to, hey, we got to go do this. Then you're not an addict. If you can stop and just carry on with your life and not do these behaviors, you're not an addict. You were just doing them because you could get away with it and you thought that you would never get caught. But you might not be addicted. Now, again, why does this matter? Because the treatment is different. What is that? Why have that guy waste a ton of his time through all these addiction-based, sobriety-based, abstinence-based treatment protocols, which a lot of them are very time-consuming, right? And that's the whole point. The whole point is to fill your time with healthy behaviors so that these addictive thought processes can start to lose power over you. But if he's not an addict, I would say you can skip to recovery. You can skip to change. Right? We don't need to have this massive emphasis on sobriety and abstinence and just hounding this guy of when are you going to cheat next? And, I bet you're looking at all these women at the gym. And maybe he's not though. I never did. I wasn't this massive fantasy guy. I respect tons. I respect women. I'm very close with my sister, my daughter. I'm not this guy who's just running around looking at women like pieces of meat. I have boundaries there, right? I'm a professional in healthcare, right? I'm seeing patients all day long. I'm not just this pervert. And so I do think we need to be careful with some of the blanket kind of diagnoses that go with addiction and just throwing that on any single guy who's ever cheated. Because it's if you're an addict, then yeah, you probably hear all that in your stuff and you're like, oh my gosh, that's so me. Please help. Right. So it's probably great. But if you're not, it can be pretty darn offensive. I mean, I really had a hard time with everyone telling me how addicted I was when I was not addicted. I can stop. I'm going to stop. I don't have plans to go back to these things. Right. And so being hounded every single day of, did you call your sponsor today? Or, you're only going to 2 meetings this week. Or, it became a bit frustrating for me because I felt like I was being talked to and treated like I had a problem that I never had. Truly. I never did any of these things. And now all of a sudden I'm being treated like it. Now, again, guys, we need to have some grace here. They don't know what our addiction is, and neither do you when you first start. So I would say yes, it's frustrating when someone comes to you and is telling you that you have a problem you don't have. That is frustrating. I hear that. I was frustrated by it too. We need to have a little bit of grace here, because what your couples therapist and the different CSATs, what they're trying to do with you and your partner is stabilize, get some safety in, right? And so they, your therapist doesn't know what your process addiction is. And it'll be a few months until they really figure out the ins and outs of it. And your wife is freaked out, right? She's reading the books. She's listening to podcasts. You just lied to her for however many years in the most horrific way. So her nervous system is shot. She is freaked out. She's absolutely freaked out. So, and she doesn't believe you for a second. So when you're like, oh, honey, you don't have to worry about that. I don't fantasize. She's like, yeah, whatever. You've lied to me before. You're probably lying to me now. So guys, we have to have a little bit of grace here, especially in that first 6 months or even the first year of, guys, you don't realize what lying does. It's very, very, very damaging to other people. Very damaging when we lie like that blatantly. Okay. So what I'm saying basically is, if they're going to accuse you of things that you've never done, just let it go. Nod your head and say, yeah, I understand why that would be concerning because of how much I've lied. But I can assure you, it's top of mind right now. I'm not going to do that. Don't defend yourself and say, hey, I've never done that. Why are you accusing me? Don't go there. Just you guys got to have some grace in the beginning here. Now, as time goes on, you start to figure out the ins and outs of your particular process addiction, and you start to realize that, hey, it's really not sexual. It's really more around, like if you've listened to the podcast, you've heard of mine, right? Mine's really about attention, admiration, superiority, accomplishment. Yes, it involves women sometimes. But usually it also involves impressing businessmen and doing well in business and making lots of money and buying fancy things, right? So it was really all about attention, right? And women got caught into that. But the truth was, my process addiction was way more robust than just physical or sexual interactions with encounters with women. It was a lot of other things. And so that's why I'm saying, if we don't necessarily need this massive addiction, sobriety, emphasis. And again, guys, make sure that you're actually truly not addicted. That's something that you should talk about in your peer group, and make sure the other guys are like, I think you are. Talk to your therapist about it. You're not the person, you're not qualified to come in and decide whether you're an addict or not, right? You need to get into this, and do your own due diligence and do your own therapy work and do your own recovery work to kind of figure out what was the root of all of these decisions. And was it truly addiction with this, was it this addictive escapism, coping, emotional regulation thing, or is it not? Because if it's not, I think then we start to kind of transition more towards just recovery and kind of fast forward through the whole sobriety thing. If relapse is not this massive imminent thing for you, if you're not addicted, then now we just need to make sure, okay, so if you're not addicted, we need to change the thought processes that led to the decisions, right? So again, I usually use me as an example because it's just easier for me because I'm familiar with my process addiction. So what do I mean by if you're not an addict, kind of skipping to more of a recovery-based approach rather than a sobriety, abstinence-based approach? We got to figure out what went on in your brain, right? So for me, obviously, I already told you guys, right? So my big thing was insecurity, right? So I was engaging in behaviors to boost my resume and make myself look more impressive, right? So that's great, and we need to work on that. But then the question is, let's go before that even. Okay, why do you need to be impressive? What's that going to give you, right? What's the benefits of being impressive? And then what's the consequences of being unimpressive, right? So if you're not, super wealthy and you're not the top in your career, and women aren't giving you all this, so what's the consequence of that then, right? What are you? Are you a loser? Is your life boring? Right? If, women aren't giving you attention, that means that you're not that special, right? Like, what are you concluding about not having their attention? All right. So it's what am I getting out of it? What am I trying to avoid? Right? It's all these questions that we need to start asking to really understand your process addiction. And I think this is why I am personally in such great recovery, and I've spent a ton of time on the recovery work. There's sobriety and abstinence and all that. And again, if you're an addict, you definitely need to focus on that. I am in full support. I do believe if you are an addict, I do believe you cannot recover until you get sober, right? So if you truly are addicted to sex or pornography, you gotta sort that out. But the recovery works where the magic happens, right? That's where the decision-making changes. That's where the safety comes back. Right? That's where your wife's going to start trusting you again, right? How well do you understand your process addiction? This perceived benefit, why it was worth the risk, and then the consequences that you were trying to avoid, right? What went into making these series of decisions? What were you getting out of it? Because you were getting something out of it. Humans don't just self-destruct and violate their integrity for no reason. They violate their integrity because they think it was worth it. Your question is, why did I think it was worth it, right? That's recovery work, especially for the guys who don't necessarily fall into that addiction kind of category. You really need to start to figure out, hey, how can I promise my wife that this isn't going to happen again if I don't really know why I made the decision in the first place? Now, for those of you who want to figure this out more, and if you're a betrayed partner listening to this episode, check out my book. It's a really short book. It's 190 pages. For those of you who don't read, it's on audiobook as well on Audible. You can search my name, Roland Cochran, or you can also look up the High Achiever's Guide to Sex Addiction Recovery. But yeah, my book talks all about process addiction. How does it form? What do you need to do to recover? All that's in the book. I'll put the link to Amazon in the show notes. But seriously, it does matter. It does matter if you're an addict or not. It does matter because it's going to potentially slow down your recovery if you are not. Right? I would say we don't need to have as much of an emphasis on sobriety and abstinence. I would always go there first just to make sure you're not an addict. It's not going to hurt you. But if it starts to seem like maybe you're not addicted, okay, hey, maybe let's start kind of bumping over to the recovery side of things and start, getting a move on over there. Because ultimately that's where the safety and the trust is.